So welcome back, everybody. This is episode 5. We're on episode 5. And we already spoiled last episode what we were going to do. And we have just come back from a music festival. So we figured it would be a good idea to talk about that. Mm-hmm. So be a bit like, it's a bit more informal, it's a bit more chill this week. But I've got a bunch of research that I've printed out and a game that we're going to play today to talk about like music identity, because I think it's one of those like important things that oftentimes gets like overlooked a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, like, were you ever bullied for the music that you like?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes and no. So what I found was that there was kind of almost intergroup bullying. So when I was probably, I'm trying to think, so the first ever band, ironically, that I ever went to see ever was Five.
Okay.
And they played at Download, yeah. So it was a bit of like a full circle kind of like, so I think when I was about 10 or 11, for one of my friend's birthday parties, her mum and dad literally took me, her best friend, and a couple of other friends to go see Five. And I think back now, I'm just like, that must have been so expensive. But I think it was just really important to her at the time. So that was the first band I ever went to see. Then I kind of discovered Spice Girls, because I remember just like Wannabe coming out and my dad being like, you've got to come down and see this, girl power, like it's amazing. And so when I was probably like kind of 10, 11, it was all about sort of like Spice Girls and kind of those sort of things. But then I think by the time I got to probably high school, so probably maybe sort of like 13 onwards, that's when I started to discover music for my own sort of like music's sake, I suppose. And I remember distinctly being at college and I was kind of more into sort of Korn and kind of, I think Lamb of God was sort of like, they were a little bit later by the time I was kind of like 15, so kind of more into sort of like, yeah, you kind of your metal, kind of like heavier stuff. And I got shunned by all of the kids who were into like the pop punk stuff. So we were the Grebos, the goths, and we couldn't hang out with the cool skater kids, basically. And there was definitely into alternative music kind of sort of like shunning going on, which was really weird and really strange, I thought, because ironically my favourite kind of music now, and I got more into it much later, is like the pop punk kind of stuff, and I'm just like, what horrible people they were back then. But like ironically I used to remember feeling really accepted and like I'd found my place at festivals like Download amongst other metalheads who were much kind of kinder and much more accepting, and there was that kind of community feel where it felt like other genres of music were just a little bit more kind of gatekeeperish. So yes and no, but not from the more general population, I would say.
When was your first festival? Was it Download as well?
I was looking at because it was like, isn't it, it's like XX111, so it's like the 23rd ever Download festival. And I don't know who we were watching this weekend, but I kind of turned around to my partner at one point and I was like, you know what? I think I might have gone to the very first ever Download festival. And he was like, what do you mean? I was just like, well, I'm counting it back in my head in the years, and if this is the 23rd one, the first one that I think I ever went to, I was 13 or 14.
There was a couple missed over COVID. I think they missed maybe 1 or 2 years. Mm-hmm. But
so I haven't been every year since, but the first one I went to, I think, was the first time it was Download rather than Monsters of Rock.
Okay.
So, and we looked back at the lineup when we got home, and it was like Marilyn Manson, Iron Maiden headlined, and it was only a 2-day festival at the time. Mm-hmm. We weren't allowed to camp because we were like 13, 14, so we were too little. But our parents dropped us off and basically picked us up afterwards.
Oh no!
So that was
to be fair, that's still pretty cool. Last year was my first festival.
Really?
So when I was a little kid, I never really got music. Mm-hmm. I remember being like 8 and just being like, I don't really get music. But it didn't take long before I started to see my brother started to get into rock music, and we'd have like Kerrang on TV. Mm-hmm. And one of my like most vivid memories of like discovering music was Slipknot. and it was the music video of like the kid that lives in like a shack on his own. And the part of the video I always remember is where he's eating cereal, and he turns the water tap on because he's no milk or anything, and like dirty water comes out, and he's eating like muddy water and cereal. And I remember like listening to the music and seeing this video, and my mum being like, "Oh, I don't know if I should let you guys listen to this." But she relented and she let us listen to it. And I started to get into rock music, but I was relentlessly bullied as a kid for my music taste. So all the time it was getting called mosher and all of that stuff. I used to have the big baggy jeans and the chains and stuff. But then as time went on, I started to get more into like goth and black metal. So for me, I've got my t-shirt on my back of my battle jacket, I've got the patch for Cradle of Filth. Cradle of Filth was my big thing that I got into. And Death Stars as well as like a proper like goth coded metal really. So I really started to get into that, and I remember where I'm from, the town that I'm from, we had like a group of like usually you'd kind of go, okay, there were the moshers and metalheads or whatever, that would hang out on some benches called the benches by like a church in like the town centre. And I remember like this is where all the like, you know, the cool kids hung out there. I remember I walked past with a friend, and my friend knew somebody. I remember that somebody there used to like scream at me, holy water at me. I'd have like this black trench coat on, and like even those kids thought that I was too like extreme on like the metal spectrum, I suppose. But then a few years later, I kind of started to tone that stuff down because of how much I was getting bullied. I used to have like stuff thrown at me and all sorts. Like never been involved with the police except for when I was talking to the police about being assaulted, basically. Like that's my interaction with music. So I ended up like toning it down a bit, and I ended up joining like the Benches group. And I was with that, and it was a bunch of kids that liked rock and metal music, and they'd go to festivals and stuff. But I was always a bit of a weird one. So they were obviously like it was quite rough, right? There were kids that were, you know, they'd steal from the local shops. Some of them would drink. Some of them did like do some drugs. I never did any. I'd hang out with them. I never really saw much of a problem with hanging out with it. But I was always like really responsible. And I always feel like a bit of a loser. Being like, I hung out with all these kids and they were all doing. We got to a point where we like hung out there long enough that we ended up hanging out with a biker gang. Right? So we used to hang out in a biker gang, like a pub that they'd all hang out with. That was a really interesting time. But I was always the straight edge kid, and everybody would go off and like go to these like biker like festivals and stuff where like you'd get like tied to a post and everybody would throw eggs at you if it's your first time, like proper like hazing kind of stuff. And it always put me off. So I never did any festivals under a fear that like I'd just basically get slapped around and abused for the first one. Like, yeah, okay, after the first one, whatever. But I just didn't like the idea of doing that for the first one. But my hearing isn't great. So I used to have issues with hearing. And when I was like a kid, my language was stunted and I had to go to speech therapy and stuff like that. And so going to music gigs was always problematic because my ears would always play up. So my first gig I ever went to, I was 14. And it was, I don't know if you've ever heard of Churisats. So they're Viking metal, and they wear like red and black paint, like face paint. They're so cool. They're not really a thing anymore, but they did play Download a bunch, and they were really popular when they were there. So I saw them when I was 14, and then the next time that I went and paid to see a live band was 2 years ago, when I was 31. So I went 17 years without seeing any live music because of my hearing. And it was because I got loops, the earplugs, because I saw people saying it. And I saw that Cradle of Filth were doing a gig, and I was like, God, I used to love Cradle of Filth. And I just turned to my wife and I went, would you go with me? And she was like, yeah, let's go. So I tried it, and I was like, I'm going to take the loops, I'm going to try it. And it was completely fine. My ears were completely fine, and I absolutely loved it. It was like the perfect set for me because it was all the songs that I'd ever want to see from Cradle of Filth. There was like one song they didn't play that I'd want them to play, It was so good. And then we went to see like Trivium and Bullet for My Valentine when they did the 20th anniversary tour a couple of months after. And I remember my wife and I were sat there and we're just like, my ears are okay when we're doing this. And we kind of looked at each other and went, should we do a festival? Should we do download? And we were like, oh, it's kind of expensive because I don't like the idea of sleeping on an airbed. So we were looking at the VIP camping glamping option, and we just kind of went, oh, let's just do it. So we booked in to do it, and so last year was my first time doing a festival. We loved it and immediately booked onto it. But now I'm trying to buy a house, so we finished this year, and I just went, I don't know if we can afford to go again. Like, we'll see. But, like, just everything's just so expensive when buying a house at the moment. So we're just getting hit by all sorts of stuff left, right and centre. But, yeah.
I mean, this is something that I've noticed at festivals, which is kind of, and this is like the socialist in me is probably going to get right on my soapbox now, but I noticed when I was looking at the map of Download this year that the amount of camping or glamping or caravanning even that is premium versus
that's expanding and the other stuff's shrinking.
The other stuff is massively shrinking, so they've kind of halved the size of the field of just like the cheap caravan pictures, which is what we got 2 years ago. Couldn't get a ticket for it this year, tried to get a ticket for it again for next year, couldn't because it's half the size. The general campsites are shrinking as well, and then the VIP stuff is bigger. So is the Camping Plus area. And this year there was loads of complaints about kind of people just not being able to find camping space because it was sold out. We were lucky because we were in like a mini moshers bit because we obviously go with our 7-year-old, so we've got like a designated bit which is a bit more space. But yeah, I think affordability wise, it's definitely, I'm wondering whether or not there is a bit of a shift in that they know what clientele are going to spend more money at these kind of events as well, and therefore they're kind of adapting it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if you filled in the questionnaire.
Yeah, I did it last night.
I did it last night. This brings it back to psychology a little bit. I was literally sitting doing it, taking my little girl to swimming lessons, and I was like, oh, I've got like half an hour, I'll do like the questionnaire, maybe win a couple of free tickets. 20 minutes in, I'm just like, what do we put people through? I'm just like, I am going to never recommend to my students that they do a questionnaire that takes more than like about 20 minutes because like we know it, but like the fatigue, I was just like, none of my answers are like credible after this point. They're just like going down.
It was asking stuff like, how much did you spend in the local area on food, on transport, on this? There was like 8 questions on spending in the local area. I felt so bad because I put nothing for all of them. Because we drove in, we stayed in the arena, and we didn't leave, and then we left, and that was it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just piles of questions. But yeah. So what were you going to say, sorry, about?
What was I going to say?
The increase in the glamping and you were doing the questionnaire. Yeah,
well, I think that was it, really. It was just like, I don't know whether or not that there is, I think when I used to go to Download, and I don't know if this is just an age thing, and again, maybe this brings it sort of back to psychology a little bit, is when I used to go, those things never would factor into my experience. So I'd kind of go for the music, I wouldn't really think about the bigger picture, I wouldn't think about the marketing, the money, the capitalism, all those kind of things, whereas sort of like now I'm kind of thinking, everywhere I was sort of looking, I was just like, this is a money-making opportunity. Yeah. This is a money-making opportunity. And it just kind of, it very much, I mean, but again, at the end of the day, it is a business. Like, that is what they're there to do. They're there to kind of, like, produce something that makes people money. But I think I started to feel a little bit resentful for the first time now, maybe, about that. So it was less about, or at times anyway. And I don't know whether or not that is just a shift that we go through as we get kind of like older. We start to worry a bit more about the money. And I think the only reason I mentioned it is because you sort of mentioned that you're thinking maybe about next year not going again. But I think maybe when you're a bit younger, maybe you are less risk averse and you just kind of...
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I mean, I kind of get it at the same time as well, just thinking from, like, my experience this year was a bit different from last year, and there were things that were better this year, That 20% discount with PayPal on food saved me so much money. Like that was amazing. 20% off almost all the food and drinks and everything. That was great. But you could tell that they sold out. And everything, like all the tickets were sold out, because I felt it was unsafe at times. They'd increased the area of the arena a little bit, but one of the issues that you have, and I've seen a lot of people arguing like, oh well, there's a legal limit. The amount of tickets is the illegal amount of people that you can have in that area. The problem that you've got is, whilst they increase the general area, the stage is still where the stage is, and so you've got more overall space, but everybody's cramming in around this small localised pocket, so they're not evenly spread out. If it was really evenly distributed, then yeah, it'd be fine, but it wasn't. And so what you ended up having was these massive like crushes at times. I don't know, you're probably familiar with baby metal. So we went to see baby metal, and we're in the pits. I like a good mosh pit. I'm covered in like bruises on my arms and cuts and stuff. I love a good mosh pit. The mosh pit at the arena, but for baby metal, we had to leave because it felt so unsafe that like the pit kept growing and everybody was getting crushed, and we had a guy, like a couple of people next to us. I don't know if he saw, she kept appearing on the big screens at times. Little girl with like these pink like sparkly things on her dad's shoulders, and they were right next to us, and we just kept getting crushed into everybody. And one of the things we noticed, and there was a lot of complaints about, is pit etiquette, mosh pit etiquette. So this was kind of funny. Baby metal's mosh pit etiquette was the worst we've ever seen, because it was mainly like 18-year-old kids by the looks of it, I'm guessing, but they're doing what's called crowd killing. I don't know if you're familiar with like hardcore metal scene. No. Crowd killing is where like it's the ones where you see people like punching.
Right.
It's that kind of stuff. But the issue is it's when they do it wildly that it gets really dangerous, and you can tell when they're doing it because it's aimless. It's all over, and they kept clashing into each other. I went to see Kublai Khan on Sunday, and Kublai Khan is like hardcore. It's where like, I don't know if you're familiar with stuff like two-stepping, for example, which is kind of like a dance move, almost. Yes, yeah. So I was in the mosh pit two-stepping to Kublai Khan on Sunday morning, and I brought my wife with me, and she's not as like, as hardcore metal as I am. And she turned to me afterwards and she went, it's so weird that we were in the most hardcore mosh pit of the whole festival, and I felt safer there than at baby metal. Which is like universal, because just the people that go to that kind of know what they're doing, and it just kind of felt unsafe that there's these big crushes, and then there's people that are going in. I mean, the amount of sets that were cut off. Architects got cut off 3 times. Yeah. Limp Bizkit got a 20-minute cut while somebody got stretchered out, because apparently somebody I'm seeing all sorts of stuff. Somebody broke their ankle, somebody broke their neck. There was all sorts of stuff that people were saying, but somebody had to get stretchered away. And I heard that Linkin Park also had something similar as well.
They did, but it turned out I think it was a bit of a false alarm.
Somebody lost a shoe.
Yeah, so again, it's very hard to know, because I've also heard mixed reports that actually somebody was hurt, but then I think they were just fine, and I don't know whether or not they just like were sort of like brushing it aside, but basically it's it's when you hold up the X symbol, isn't it, to mean stop. I didn't know that this was a thing. So like, if people in a crowd, a group of people just do like the sort of X, it basically means stop, and Emily saw a load of people doing the X, and she obviously stopped the gig. She's had so much like slack for that online as well, like
I mean, I'd give them credit for if there seems to be a problem. I mean, when you're on that stage and there's so many people, I will say like, it's going to be very difficult to know what's actually going on. But like, again, it's one of those problems that it's always like, going back to Limp Bizkit, he said, she said, where like, again, I heard somebody lost their shoe, but I also heard somebody broke their leg. And so it's kind of like, okay, there's a really mixed stuff being said. If somebody broke their leg, that's a pretty valid reason to like pause the music to get them safely out. But like, I mean, I was there last year and I was watching Lorna Shore, and we got cut off because a lady was crowd surfing, and somebody dropped her, she landed on her head and she was unconscious for like 10 seconds.
Oh, God.
And like she got up and she like had to leave. I remember seeing after the festival, she posted online being like, "It's me, sorry. Yeah, I got dropped on my head, I was unconscious, I'm fine. Like, don't worry about me." But like it happens quite a lot. I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about like music today, because it's like it seems really extreme. We're talking about, we went to this festival, it was amazing, somebody broke their neck, somebody got dropped on the head and they were unconscious.
Stretch it out.
Yeah, like... somebody had to get stretched out. It took 20 minutes. But like we also go to it for that kind of stuff. Like I unfortunately broke my spree that in the Kublai Khan pit on Sunday I fell in the mosh pit for the first time ever. I've never fallen. I've always said my wife fell in her first pit last year, and for the last year I've been like, I haven't fallen. I've been in all of these different gigs and I've been like, I've never fallen, and then this weekend I fell. I like scraped up my knee and everything. But like I will say again, like it's this mentality of when you're in like a good crowd with people that look out for each other. My left knee hit the floor. I scraped my knee a little bit to the point like it's not even bleeding. It's just you can see that there's a bit of like skin been kind of like scuffed a bit. Before my right knee even hit the floor, somebody had grabbed me by my jacket and pulled me up, and I was going already. I was still going, and so like there's still that like really core sense of community in it. So whilst it looks really aggressive, a lot of it is very like communal based. So a lot of the research that I've written for everybody really does focus on that aspect of like it looks aggressive from the outside, and people that aren't in that scene view it as being like violent, and like metalheads are all like really aggressive violent people and they're attacking each other and that's how they like have fun, is like punching each other. But I mean, like we're saying, baby metal, where people were actually like looking like they might punch somebody, everybody's like, hell no, that's too dangerous, like that, no, not going near that. But then you go to like one of the more like, again, hardcore bands. I wouldn't say baby metal's hardcore, like, sorry. So you're going to have to argue with me in the comments on if baby metal is hardcore.
For context, yeah, Cara was looking at being baby metal because like she loves kind of like K-pop and kind of sort of like it's kind of like it blends kind of elements of K-pop and metal and kind of so yeah. And we didn't go in, but we watched them sort of like from afar and stuff. So yeah.
No, I mean, did you see Bandmade? Did you take it? Bandmade, I would fully recommend. Okay. So again, me and my wife were saying after baby metal, we're actually really disappointed by it. I don't know. There's lots of different things. We'll not get into it here. But I saw Bandmade, and they're a Japanese metal band, and they were phenomenal. I was front and centre. This year, one of my highlights is how many bands I was at the fence for, the barrier for, in the Dogteeth stage, which is usually where all the heavier bands go. Loads of bands, and I managed to get a bunch of like free stuff.
Really?
So one of the bands I wanted to see the most was Lawan. So they're an Iranian band. They live in London, and they do their music is like it's heavy metal, but it's around like Iranian like folklore. So the latest album, which is "Do Not Go to War with the Mazandaran," the Mazandaran is part of like a big like again Iranian folklore around like demon world and stuff like that. And so they sing around like historic stuff, kind of like if we had like an English band that sings around like King Arthur and Merlin and stuff like that. It's kind of that equivalent. I got a guitar pick from the lead guitarist for that band, and then I saw Blood Incantation, and they are death metal band that were absolutely wild. I hadn't heard them before. And they were doing a tour and they played their full album, and you know you're watching a death metal band when I got the set list from them and I looked at the set list and they played for about 45 minutes and it had 3 songs listed because each song was 20 minutes long. It was absolutely phenomenal, really really good band, but super happy to just be like right at the front and centre for a lot of them. It was really cool, but yeah, like I think it's that like social culture aspect to it. I made a few friends this year, which was really nice. Just like there was a guy that I just kept bumping into at the front of the stage, at the Dogteeth stage. I always find it funny because he was just some kid, you know. And he was having fun. And I don't know if it was like his first time, but he was on his own. and I ended up adding him on Instagram. And afterwards, I was saying to my wife, I was like, "Guys, could I have a look at my Instagram? It would be really weird because I spent most of the festival very drunk. Like, I'll be honest. Yes, they had some good choices for alcohol.
Responsibly drunk, though. Right?
Responsibly drunk. I remember pretty much everything. And it's always this like, you meet somebody and then you're like, oh, you know, do they know what I do? Because it's always one of those like, you think of like your university lecture and you think it's some like old dude that like speaks like he comes from Oxford and stuff like that, and then there's me turning up, just being like, let's go, and then you're like, oh right, okay, well, you know, the day after download, I come back and I'm teaching my students, and it's just like there's this big disconnect between it. But I suppose it kind of links to what I was saying earlier as well, when I was like younger and hanging out with people, that I was always a bit more sensible, and there's always this kind of like identity clash, I suppose, where I kind of feel like I don't really fit that like stereotypical metalhead. Like sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'm trying to find that identity is always really like weird, I suppose.
I mean, I've said this before and I say it quite a lot when we do things like open days or even when I'm just sort of like teaching my students. I mean, I did my undergraduate at a different university and I did my PhD at a different university. But I actually chose to move to Coventry, and one of the reasons that I chose to move to Coventry was because as a university, I felt like it was very, very accepting of things like personal kind of identity. So I've never felt out of place lecturing in my Doc Martens, my band t-shirts, with my tattoos, those kind of things. I do know what you mean though. When I'm out and about in public, I feel sometimes like, you know, people, I can't remember what it was. I think I was out somewhere and someone was asking me like, I don't know if it was a bank or it was like, I don't know, somewhere where they were just like, oh, and what's your title? It's like, is it Miss, is it Mrs? And I was like, Doctor, and they went, oh, like, well done. And I was just like, I mean, well done, like, kind of like, thanks.
I get that as well. I had a guy come to my house trying to sell me something, and he was like, okay, what's your title? And I went, Doctor. And he was like, oh, right, okay. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like you wouldn't. I don't know if they would always question kind of like. My supervisor used to say that as well. Like sometimes it can. She used to. One of her favourite things was to go out and pay for a meal and just sort of like put the credit card or whatever on the table, which would say Dr. So and so, and they'd take it away, use it, and then she'd always watch who they would give it back to, and they would often give it back to her husband and not to her. But yeah, what was I going to say? Like, but yeah, I think I've never felt out of place though, being able to sort of be myself here. So I think that is something that I think is quite unique to Coventry, and obviously I know that I've been here for quite a while now, and you've been here for quite a while. Well, not very
7
long.
months, 8
7
months.
months, like it's getting on a bit now. But like, I wonder if over time you might feel more able to express that side.
Yeah, I try and dress neutrally for work. I think one of my big things, and I try and express it with my battle jacket, because my battle jacket, when I did download last year, I was like, I think I want to make one, because I think it's a really good way to like express personality, because you put your bands on it. But I mean, I was showing you, I've got a Kellogg's swimming badge from, when I was a kid. I earned one of these. But I mean, even on the back, I've got a QR code that if you scan it, and a couple of people scanned it, downloaded, and came up to me, that it takes you to. Have you ever heard of Rick rolling somebody?
Yes.
Never gonna give you. Well, it takes you to the video for that. So if you stood in a queue, somebody scans it, and a bunch of people came up to me, and they were just like, "I've just scanned your thing. You got me." And I'm just like, ah. I mean, I've got like a little brain, and I've got like a cat on the back, but I've also got like a ton of bands that I like as well. And one of my things that I always like struggle skirting the line with is because I'm into more of like the extreme metal. I listen to like slam, and I listen to like all sorts of stuff that people would like. you'd look at, you go, okay, that's serial killer music. I've got where did I put it? Here, I've got Cannibal Corpse, for example. I was like, I want a Cannibal Corpse patch, but they're all like Cannibal Corpse. Is you kind of cross it as a genre with what's called gore, which is just music that's around gore, and it's the way that it tends to get expressed is it's like watching horror movies. So So, for example, Nikita, she's in my office, sports scientist, absolutely phenomenal researcher. She loves horror movies, and nobody thinks twice about her going, I'm going to go to this haunted house, or I'm going to, I just watched, I don't know, like Saw or something like that, and everybody goes, okay, it's a bit gross, not for everybody, but like cool. And then I'll go, oh yeah, I just went and watched Cannibal Corpse, and everyone's like, oh, you're one of those people. And I'm like, it's no different than going watching Saw or going watching like a horror movie. Like Ice Nine Kills was playing this weekend, and their whole thing is
the theatre,
the clown. I can't remember, the one with the white face with the black around his eyes or something. It's from a horror movie. I'm not really into that band, to be honest, but like it's kind of the same as that, the way they would look at it. And there are some bands that are like, they try to be extreme for reasons. So my big back patch, I spent ages hunting for this patch because it was like a small release one. It's for a band called Cattle Decapitation. So the name itself is really gory. The band, like when you look into it, it's a social activist band. Right, so they say like they're vegan, but when you're on the road, sometimes you just can't get vegan food, so you have to go with vegetarian. I'm not vegan, I'm not vegetarian, but their music is a case of like, you hear the name Cattle Decapitation and you go, ooh, that's a bit gross. And their whole thing is going, why is it gross to hear that name, but it's okay for you to just go and eat a burger afterwards then? You don't think that's gross, so why is our band gross, but you going and actually eating a decapitated cattle, why is that okay? The earlier stuff was very like anti-animal consumption and so on, and then as they've gone on, it's become more like environmentalism and talking about like overpopulation and like the way that people treat each other and the way that like billionaires and like the government and so on like treat people, and so it's very like, again, like activist kind of approach, but it doesn't really look like it. So one of the challenges that I always get is that sometimes a lot of this stuff is like, it is really visceral. Like a lot of Cannibal Corpse patches, for example, are just like outright gore on them. They show like people being cut up or whatever. And so my approach is always, I don't want to wear something in public that does that. Because like, I want to be seen as like, I am a metalhead and I do really like a lot of these like extreme bands, but I know that other people are uncomfortable with it. So like, I really like Cradle of Filth, and it was a nightmare finding a Cradle of Filth t-shirt that doesn't either have a naked lady on it or just like all sorts of profanity on it. Like, there's anybody that likes Cradle of Filth will know the t-shirt. I just need to say the t-shirt, the one with the writing on the back. there is a stereotypical t-shirt that they have, and I'm like, okay, well the design is all right, but like it's made to be almost confrontational. And like, I don't really like that approach because it doesn't really do us any favours. It makes people look at us and kind of go, well, it is aggressive, it is really in your face. And I know that, again, a lot of it, Cattle Decapitation and so on, is trying to get people to like talk about difficult issues and to think about a lot of this stuff. But some of it, for me, feels like it really pushes the line. So all of my patches, I've taken quite a lot of care when I'm like looking for them and buying them to get them so that like a kid could look at that and it'd be okay. Like, again, the worst thing I've got is like Cattle Decapitation. The patch, I can probably show it on camera for everybody in a little bit. It's like a multi-armed cow, and it's got like knives, but they don't have blood on them or anything, it's just holding knives. So I kind of went, that's okay. I feel, again, like it kind of pushes it, but I feel like it's in context with everything else, it's kind of okay. And so there are, like, I do feel like limits. There are some people that try and be as like confrontational as they can be with a lot of this stuff, and they do make them that are like really in your face and really, like uncomfortable to be around at times. But again, a lot of it is, again, it's like the social bonding thing. It's this idea of like, trying to create social groups, right? Social identity theory is something that comes up a lot in the research. This idea that like you're trying to identify your in-group and your out-group, and using these really like extreme visual images is like a very effective way of filtering out, your out group, because you will get like clear visceral reactions from people. You know, if you walk down the street and you see that guy full of piercings with the big spiky hair all over, who crosses the road to avoid them, there you go, you've identified your out group. They don't have the same kind of frame of reference as you. You're creating that clear division and social group. But like, I don't know, for me, I find it quite difficult to like go to that length. When I used to, when I was younger, I used to have, I was tempted to wear my New Rocks, the big goth boots that you get. I've got a pair of them. They are kind of uncomfortable, but I do tend to wear them I'll wear them to gigs, but for like download, they're too uncomfortable to wear for like half a week. So I don't bother taking them for that. But when I used to wear them when I was younger, people would like basically pick on you for wearing them. And it's a case of like, well, they're just shoes, right? I just want to wear these boots that I think look kind of cool, and just like fit in with everybody else, but not have to look the same as everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge that you get is you tend to, and there's obviously a lot of link between sort of like social identity formation, and the age at which you also start to do things like listen to music a lot more kind of like independently, and these things all coincide, and they coincide for a reason, right? When you're about sort of like 12, 13, 14, that's when you're trying to really establish your individuality. We know from developmental theories, from all the research, that's when it really kind of kicks in as sort of like an important facet of kind of like self sort of like discovering. But it also coincides with things like being allowed that little bit of kind of personal freedom to go out and explore and to go to these kind of gigs and stuff. So yeah, I think it's tricky, because at that age, at the same time, social circles are also getting incredibly defensive, and we tend to see an increase in things like relational bullying. So kind of trying to take somebody down based on their social standing, for example, because you have one group that's trying to sort of like, or one individual that's trying to sort of like increase their sort of social standing over somebody else, for example. And that tends to happen at around that age as well. So it's really not surprising that when you're making all those kind of fashion choices at that age, you are going to get a lot of pushback from other young people, because it's all about defining these kind of like social groups. But yeah, it's really tricky. And I was just thinking when you were talking about sort of like, because I think to start with, I think the way that you approach the patches and everything is really nice and really good. Like I don't know many people that put that much thought into it. Like they will just wear yeah. I mean, I think last time we did the podcast, I was a bit worried because I had my distiller's top on, I think, and it's the image of, essentially, it's all like it's a cartoon, a line drawing, but essentially it is a naked woman. She has got like a slash, there is blood, kind of like, and we were debating whether or not that was suitable to sort of like have kind of like on a podcast or not. And it's a really tricky line, isn't it? It's between sort of like, do you express self-identity, or do you curb it at risk of offending other people? And I think that's a much bigger kind of conversation. But it reminded me of another challenge that we have when we take our little girl to festivals and to gigs, and we have this rule essentially that, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but she's allowed to swear only when it's in the lyrics of a song. So she loves it, because she thinks that, she actually said to me the other day, oh, download is swear heaven, I'm going to get to like swear all the way through. And I'm just like, and then at one point she started just walking along, just singing the lyrics to something and swearing away. I was like, no, like not between the bands as we're walking. But we've got a couple of videos of her sort of like singing away, and the swear words in it. Like obviously, like we saw Limp Bizkit, and there's a whole song that's dedicated to sort of like swearing. And I was like, are people going to judge me? Are we bad parenting almost by allowing this kind of like, where is the line, where is the benefit versus, and what is it that I'm worried about? Am I worried about the judgment? Because my partner, and he'll probably watch this back, he's very much of the opinion that words are just words. and that essentially we are the ones that have attributed offence to them one way or another, and that you should be allowed to just use the words. And he swears like a trooper. I don't really swear that much. My mother doesn't swear, and if she were kind of like, she thinks it like, oh, it shows low intellect, all these kind of things. So we were very much brought up in a household of like, you don't swear, you don't use it. Whereas he will just drop an F-bomb every two sort of, like, he uses it like as an adjective, basically, just to kind of like, it just sort of decorates the way that he kind of like talks. But I just don't know whether or not, where do you draw the line with things like that as well? Like,
it's difficult. I mean, I'll say I swear so much in my classes. For me, I find that like swearing really like, I find it helps me connect with students. I mean, I was talking to students. I like to build a good relationship with the students, and we have like a good laugh. And we had a class that are like master's students of the project planning module. We're doing seminars and like really got on with them. And I think I just started like, I was talking about module evaluations and doing them, and I was just effing and blinding all over the place. And at some point, I think I swore like at the class, being like, "Oh, you effers, don't like," but like they all loved it. They were laughing because they knew that like it wasn't aggressive. It was just me being like, you know, flippant and just like, yeah, whatever, like you, yeah. So I do find like it does help to like bond, because I don't like that view of like somebody looking at me and being like, so like my old job, I used to run an undergraduate module. We used to have, I had 165 students in my second year class, big lecture theatre. We do have classes like big classes here as well. First thing I did to those students was I said, I've got a task for everybody and I expect everybody to get involved in it. And that task is, I want every single person in this room to send me an email, and we're going to break the email system. I want to crash the email system that we have, and you're all going to spam my inbox and write whatever garbage you want to. And I got all sorts. Students that sent me pictures of their pets. Somebody sent me the script for Shrek 2. Just some people were just like, "Hi Alex," whatever. Like, it does not matter. But the point of it, and I told them afterwards, was, right, next time you want to ask me a question, and you're going, "Oh, I don't know if I can email Alex." Somebody sent me the script to Shrek 2. You can email me a question about the module. Like, come on. So it's about like really trying to like informalise and break that barrier of like, you can speak to me. Like really, there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? Like, speak to me. And so like, I feel like that's one of the reasons why I like swear a lot, is it's just really like brings down that formality and goes, oh, well, actually, he's just like me. And that's what I want students to feel like, not that like they have to. There's a degree of respect where like I have to respect them and they have to respect me to a level, but like I don't feel like students have to like be scared of speaking to me. And the same thing with like wearing this and the way that I design my patches is I don't want anybody in the street to look at me and feel like they have to avoid me or that they couldn't speak to me or anything, because I feel like in general I'm a very approachable person, but like trying to express that whilst also trying to express like this kind of thing is they don't always go hand in hand. Did you see last episode, by the way? You said you were going to send me a picture of you revising a download. I did,
and I haven't sent it to you.
You didn't? You should. Did you watch the episode?
I haven't watched it.
You haven't watched it? Watch it, because I put in a placeholder, and all I'm going to say is that took me 5 minutes in Paint, and it's pure artwork. I made a picture and just went, Kat didn't send me the picture, so here's my artist rendition of you sat in your tent, surrounded by tents, and then the big like Apex stage in the background with legally distinct band playing. I was like, right, I've not got it, what am I going to do? You know what, I fancy drawing.
That's amazing, and I'm also saying that's like, I've just had to admit that I basically, haven't had a chance to actually catch up on our like...
That's alright. No problem. We'll have to see what happens. I might put some pictures in this one.
I think I'll have to dig out some videos, particularly of Cara singing to Linkin Park, so I can show that I have a child that really appreciates it.
People have an attitude of festivals that kind of like almost anything goes to like a degree, but then you have that added level of, but there are kids there. And then all of a sudden it becomes significantly worse. But then you get back to the other argument of, well, should kids be there? Because there's this thing like with like gigs, for example, that a lot of gigs say that you have to be 13 or older to attend them. When I attended my first one, I was 14, and I remember being like, oh, I'm only just old enough to go to this gig. And so then there's this argument about why a festival's any different, because the same behaviour you see at a gig, you see at festivals, if not more. You see it at like a worse level debate, really, about, are you normalising that kind of behaviour for kids? Do you want children to see that? Because again, if we're thinking around social identity and just like, you go with like classic psychology theories of just like observing behaviour in adults and normalising it in children, and like at like a festival, everybody gets drunk. Like if somebody got really drunk and they started like throwing up, there'd be a bunch of people nearby that'd be like, that's really gross. I've managed to avoid ever seeing anybody like throw up at a festival. I don't know how, it's a miracle. But I also imagine there'd be a bunch of people that would be like, way! And then you see a kid would see that and be like, oh, like, okay, that's okay, that's acceptable. And so it's really difficult, in my mind, to like get that judgment of like what is and isn't acceptable. But that's where it comes down to parents. A lot of the research talks around, like music as a positive, as a force for positive. A lot of the research focuses a lot on like rock and metal music from a negative aspect as well. And I feel like there are these scenarios like this guy that are like clear examples of how the culture can be really negative and can put other people in dangerous spots. So it can be really difficult because, I'm here and I'm like, I'm going to make sure that my patches are okay, that like somebody sees me down the street and they don't feel intimidated. And then there's like, a guy that's unconscious on the floor and his kid's like, lost basically. And it's this like, where do you find that like middle ground? I don't know.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think a lot of it does just come down to sort of like parental or carer kind of like responsibility. So I think for us, so my partner doesn't drink. He doesn't like it, doesn't drink at all. I do really love beer, love craft beer, love craft ales, those kind of things. But I drink minimally now. I never used to drink loads anyway, but like kind of, I think, again, for me, like it's Friday today, I won't drink tonight because I want to go for a run tomorrow morning, but I might have a couple of cans of beer tomorrow night. At the festival, I snuck in one single can of cider, which I always had with the very last band of the night. And I got them in every single time. I never got quite... Once, one of the security guards felt it and he was just like, what is that? And I was like, oh, it's a can of Coke. And he was just like, do you get low blood sugar? And I was like, yeah.
So, I've talked a little bit about research earlier, like mentioned like social identity and the importance of it. I have read a bunch of papers and I've gathered a bunch of stuff. And I thought it was quite interesting. To be fair, a lot of it is kind of what I would expect. So,
before you get into that, sorry, I just wanted to say, for years and years and years, and I don't know whether or not this is going to come up in the research, you've obviously read around it a bit more than I have, like, for years, I always wanted, because I love festivals, so we were speaking about kind of like when we first went to a festival, so I think, mine was when I was kind of like 13, 14, it's just like a day ticket. Then a couple of years later, then when we were about 15, that was when I first camped at one, and then after that, so I think I've been to Download about 5 or 6 times, but I've also been to Lowlands Festival, V Festival, Beautiful Days Festival, where else have I been? So I've been to international festivals and kind of like home festivals, and I used to say that festivals was my happy place because of kind of like the community and the difference that you feel, and I always wanted to do a study that looked at kind of sort of social conventions within that kind of festival setting. And I think it comes back to what you were talking about earlier when you mentioned that we behave differently in a festival setting than how we probably would behave out and about in public. So it's almost, I often talk now to my students about something called like the online disinhibition effect, where like when you're online, because you're not kind of face to face with people, you might over disclose, or you might be slightly meaner to people, or you kind of might say things differently because there's no concept of maybe who you're talking to. So the victim or the person you're talking to, and this is where it comes into like cyberbullying and stuff, isn't as present. You don't know any information about them in terms of their sort of like social standing, so you might tell, I don't know, some very important politician to bleep off or whatever, but it's because but you might not say it in real life to them because you just don't get that sense of their social standing or importance when it's kind of like online. And I just wonder whether or not actually we get this kind of festival disinhibition effect, kind of, and whether or not anyone's ever looked at that, because I think it's a lot to do with the fact that when you go to a festival, it is very much like a blank canvas. You're surrounded by people, particularly if you're kind of like camping in sort of like more of the general camping areas, where A, you don't know anything about other people, B, there are lots of people, so actually to a certain extent it is a little bit dangerous. When I say dangerous, I don't mean it's, you know, threatening. It's more just if you just think about it purely on that kind of like evolutionary level, like you're surrounded by people that you don't know and you don't know anything about. So, you know, once upon a time, humans would have not put themselves in this situation because the risk of being in a large group of people that are not your mix of your kind of like people that you're familiar with would have been too risky. So you're in that kind of situation, you don't know people, you don't know what they're capable of, so people act differently, I think, at festivals than they would do in public, simply because it's almost kind of this sort of like social conformity type behaviour where you're wary of everybody else, so you're almost nice while you kind of weigh each other up a little bit, at risk of not wanting to kind of like make enemies with those that you're close to, I think, a little bit. So I always just think that day one of a festival is also different to day 3 or 4. The longer it goes, the more Lord of the Flies it gets, kind of like, because, and it's, I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that when you get there to start with, everyone is just sort of like figuring each other out, even if it's completely subconscious, and they're being extra nice to each other because you just don't know. And it's not until sort of like later on. But then also at the same time, you've got this idea that because it's an enclosed ecosystem, it doesn't feel like what is like, you know, what happens at download stays at download. That couple that were on the Ferris wheel, I highly doubt would go to the middle of a high street in a phone box,
do something like that,
equally like kind of like clear glass, and have intimate relations. But they did there because it almost feels like your identity at that festival just feels just that little bit disconnected, I think, from who you are in the real world. And that is just something that I would love to look at in terms of research.
I think I might have like a counter proposal, which is almost the opposite of this idea of like you're surrounded by these people you don't know, and therefore like is that being a festival goer is the identity. And we'll have an episode on it. I absolutely hate Stanford Prison Experiment, but it's almost this idea of like you have this new identity as being I'm at a festival, and you then like assume behaviours that you associate with that.
True. I think you're very right. So I think it's probably elements of both. I observe myself doing things that I wouldn't have done. So one of the things that I don't like about Download very much, and this is true for other festivals too, but the litter builds up. I always think it's worse at Download than it is anywhere else. And by the day 3, you have to like basically scrape the litter into piles just to find a space to sort of stand almost. Like it's really bad. But by day 3, if I had a piece of litter, I just put it on the pile.
Yeah.
I don't know if
there was nowhere near enough bins. I complained in the feedback this year when there's nowhere, because I was with my mum and there was no bins. You can't see them. You're in a sea of people, and I just went like things like festivals. Like it's kind of normal at this point to just kind of throw it on the floor, and it's awful. I felt so guilty the past few days because I'm like, I did it when we were watching Limp Bizkit, and I went for the gyoza. So good. The gyoza is so good there. And I was just like, there's nothing anywhere, and there's so many people around, I can't do anything. And it was just, again, a pile of rubbish, and I just went, I gotta just put it with it. Yeah. So no, I completely know what you mean. And I'm always like really like snooty, like here about litter. And then there, I was just like, yeah, no, I threw something on the floor with a bunch of other stuff because, like, what else is there to do? Like, what do you do?
And you become that festival goer and everybody else is doing it, so you just do it. And you change the person that you are based on that,
Yeah. So, I suppose it's maybe a mix of, like, that inhibition of your identity and also assuming other people. You look around, you got a load of rubbish, there's no bins anywhere, what do? Well, everybody's just chucking it on a pile. I guess that's the appropriate behaviour and you just kind of do it. But yeah, no, I didn't really think that deeply about it. It was just like that guilt afterwards. I was just like, I really should have just looked for a bin.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it takes you like half an hour to do it. And there's so much going on. Like,
and there's so many hills, so it's likely that like it's probably up a hill somewhere, kind of. But what does the other research say? Like,
so some of the stuff that I mentioned earlier. So people who listen to heavy metal and like it have positive social outcomes, but those who don't like it have negative outcomes. Kind of like what we're saying, like when you look at stuff like mosh pits, for example, if you're into that, that's actually like a really good like way to let off steam and to bond with other people. The amount of times you've made friends with people because you've just been in a mosh pit together. But if you look at it from like the outside, it's just a load of people just like running around into each other and so on, and that looks like really scary. What I do find, I have actually written this down as a comment, is the research in this field is really weird, because I feel like a lot of the researchers, even if they're into the music, tend to have like stereotyped view of the music already. So something that I noticed, I'll get the exact wording, is that rock and metal music was oftentimes put into like categories of types of music and with other stuff. And so rock and metal was oftentimes labelled as either rebellious music, intense music, or both. In a bunch of different research I found, they would use the same label. I don't know if it came from like a specific study that like created these labels. There was a questionnaire about like music preference that I saw was quite common, so I don't know if it comes from that questionnaire. But I found I had a lot of issue with this because there were other labels like reflective and energetic that were used for other kinds of music. And I would find that, to be honest, a lot of metal music that I listen to is also kind of reflective or energetic. So I was mentioning cattle decapitation earlier. I feel like that's really reflective. It's very critical of like how we behave and how we interact with people in the world around us and how we treat our environment. And that's really reflective. There's a band, I've got one of their patches, they're quite small, they're called Worm. And Worm has an album they did with another band. And they've got a song that's in there, and it starts out like acoustic, and that feels like really reflective as well. It's called Infinite Chances is the song. It's a really good song. It's quite a long one, it's like 7 or 8 minutes long. But like you get these songs that come through that do feel quite like introspective. And likewise with like energetic, there are some songs. So like there's one band that I really like called Thy Art Is Murder, and they've got a song that when it opens up, I think it's called Blood Throne, the song, is like really fast beat, and whenever I listen to it I just want to run. I want to move. It makes me want to like get going. And I remember I saw them and the song came on and I was immediately like, I want to get in a pit and I want to just run around. And like that feels like the epitome of energetic music.
We listen to Electric Callboy, don't you? Yeah. I mean, granted that is like dancey sort of like rock metal. I must admit, so I've got a panic disorder that I spoke about before, and I can sometimes festivals I struggle with that, so I have like, you know, certain like accessibility and stuff, like in case I need to get out and those kind of things. I was fine all weekend, but then when we were watching Electric Callboy, after about 2/3 of their set, it got a little bit too intense. It was just like doof, 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 and I was just like, yeah. And we actually, all of us had to leave. It wasn't just me. It was also like my partner was. I don't know who we went to go see instead. Maybe like it was like we went to go see Daltrey or something. Like we moved over to kind of like the other stage. But that's pure energetic. Like that's what it is. It's just dancing kind of like.
It's the aim behind it. So I feel like the research hasn't caught up with what the music is, and like overall would you say that metal music is like intense? I suppose so, but it's also lots of other things. And it feels like it's really like we talk about in research methods and stuff like that, like reductivism and like overly simplifying stuff, and it feels like a lot of the research kind of falls prey to this. So there was one paper, it was the one that I'd sent you, that I really liked. It was just like it was a review of lots of research into like metal music, and the thing that they'd mentioned is they'd said that like a lot of the research was really biased. So what they would oftentimes do in research that goes, and again the conclusions were always rock and metal music is evil, it's bad, it's got all these negative outcomes, is what they would always do is get people who don't listen to this music to listen to it and then rate it. And then the conclusion from this review paper was, well, yeah, but if you get people who actually like it to listen to it, you get the opposite effect, and it's always really positive for them. And so a lot of research is trying to like outline that various types of music is really negative, when the way that they're going around measuring it is getting people that actively don't like it to rate it. And it seems really like it's kind of like a redundant process. You wouldn't, I wouldn't open up like a food stall and use my Google reviews by getting 100 people that don't like my food to review it. Like, it just seems pointless. Of course they're not going to like it. Of course it's going to be bad. And so like it just seems like a really really wrong way of approaching it. Some of the others, I found one paper, it's got by Stack in 1998. It was absolutely wild. Their whole thing was looking at suicide or suicidal ideation in like rock and metal music, and there are lots of research that does link suicide with this kind of genre of music, but their way of identifying whether somebody was a metal fan was based off of a subscription to a magazine.
Which magazine? Like a metal magazine?
It was a metal magazine. I didn't write down the name of it, but it was just like Metal Monthly or whatever, just like a generic one. And that was their participant group. And then they'd like looked at suicide rates and things like that. And it was just like, well, I really like metal music, and I've not subscribed to a metal magazine like ever. I might have bought like one or two random ones when I was a kid, but like never a subscription, so I wouldn't have been counted in that. And so like it just seems like a really weird way to like decide on a recruitment process. There is obviously links with drug use. Metal music is associated with increased drug use. However, again, really common is that it was never the highest. A lot of stuff like rap music and hip hop and stuff like that oftentimes had higher rates. And so, like, again, rap music obviously has a bad rap. But, like, there's nothing specifically about metal that isn't also indicative of, it's not the music itself, but it's that, like, social aspect behind that music and maybe what it encourages. Again, stuff like, there's one paper, Bocht, Hale and Becht in 21. People use their music as like a badge. They use this idea of like a badge to represent social identity, and it's a way of you like, again, identifying. We talked about like social identity theory and so on. What I did find really interesting, this was Gardikiotis and Baltzis, found that people who listen to rock music, the enjoyment of rock music was predicted by self-transcendence. And no other genre had that link. So the idea of self-transcendence is this like being more than just you, being part of like a community, a group, other people. And I thought it was really interesting that rock music was the only one that was predicted by that. So basically people interested in rock music were way more like community focused, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with, I think it's Sophie Lancaster charity. I picked up a patch from them when I was at Download. I need to add it to my jacket. But there's like a lot of stuff like that, and Download often like advertises itself as like a family. They have Download Family and stuff like that. And it's quite interesting that you can kind of see something like that in the research, that it's kind of, it seems that rock music is really kind of appealing to people that are just looking to connect for others. So again, like a lot of stuff about identity, emotional regulation, bonding with people. There's one paper, Clark and Lonsdale from 2022. This is just a direct quote from them. They said, when controlling for the effects of age, gender and personality, scores on the private collective self-esteem subscale were found to positively predict preferences for intense and rebellious, that label again, music, such as hard rock, heavy metal and punk. Scores on the importance to identity subscale, however, were found to negatively predict participants' preference for reflective and complex music, such as blues, classical and folk. So essentially, what this is saying is that collective self-esteem, that idea that we had from that self-transcendence and like this big community thing, is a really, really important part of rock music, heavy metal, all of that kind of like broader genre that you don't really find in anything else. And again, there's like importance to identity, negatively related to like blues and classical music. Flip that around, and then what you've got is, identity and communal identity and coming together and sharing ideas about stuff is really, really heavily associated with like rock and metal music, just like consistently. I did find Hines and McFerrin did, I think it was interviews with, I think it was 7 metalheads, like male metalheads. And they said qualitative work with metalheads, they noted that common and significant themes that were talked about around why people got engaged in this kind of music was engaging and validating their emotions, so trying to like figure out what am I feeling and how do I like express this and what other people feeling. Self-acceptance, positive energy, not negative, positive energy, learning about issues from like the wider world, what other people are facing, making contact with others, identity development and connecting to shared values. And I noticed that they had some quotes, and I pulled out one of my favourite quotes because it connected with me quite a lot, which was Tally's motivation. I'm assuming this is anonymised, pseudo-anonymised, they're not actually called Tally. So Tally's motivation was described earlier as his desire to make connections with new friends who also enjoyed this music, but as he described it, in the process of doing so, he then fell in love with what he thought was the essence of the music. And I find this quite a lot when I'm looking at music, that I'll listen to something that I don't really like, and then it kind of like wiggles its way in. So there's a band called Archspire, and I'm going to go and see them in October, and they're speed metal, it's technical death metal. They're insane. Are you familiar with Dragon Force? They're really fast.
Yeah.
So everybody would like blew their mind, oh my god, Dragon Force is so fast. Their music is 200 beats per minute-ish, 200, 220. Archspire's latest album, the songs average around 400 beats per minute. It's really like fast technical death metal, really impressive. But do you know Eminem's Rap God? Where you're like really fast. Okay, imagine that, but it's death metal growling where they're singing it. And when I first listened to it, I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. It's kind of like he does like the inhale growl, and it just felt a little weird, and I couldn't get into it. But it really like wiggled its way into me. And now I'm just like, you know what? I listened to the album on the way in this morning, and I bought tickets to go and see them because there's just something about it. Again, that like idea of like that essence of that music and the creativity that's going into it, and it's something that just feels so like different from everything else. I find I get really bored with like pop music because pop music always feels really samey. And then you go and you look at some of this like death metal and some of this really happy music, and there's a lot of emphasis on like creativity and expression and trying to do something different from everybody else. You know, Archspire's whole thing is like speed, as fast as you can get it. The like title track of their latest album called Too Fast to Die, I think is 440 beats per minute, and it's incredible the speed that these guys can play at. And there's just something about that really makes you feel like it's a passion for something. It's a lot of time and efforts, and I want to like celebrate that and like go and see them like show this like expertise that they've built in being able to do this as a group. And so like that's why I really like that quote, rather than like falling in love with the essence of the music. I can't understand what they say half the time. I will like, when I listen to death metal, I don't always know what they're saying, but I feel what they're saying. I feel something behind that, the way that they express that, and the like the soundscape that you get across with that. And that's what I feel I connect the most with. And then later on I might then start to like look at the lyrics. One of my favourite songs that really exemplifies this is, I don't know if you're familiar with Lorna Shore.
It sounds familiar, but I don't.
They were at Download last year, and Will Ramos is just like a genius of like heavy metal, death metal, vocalist, and they recently released an album, and one of the songs is like the heaviest song that they've got. It's really, really good. Watching it live was fantastic. But it's about his family has a history of dementia, and it's about him thinking about this whole process of like, it might happen to me when I get older. Like, I've seen this happen to my family, and it's probably going to happen to me, and I'm expressing this. And they had another song called Glenwood, and it's named on the street that he grew up in. And the video for it's really heartbreaking because it's about him and his dad. I think maybe his mother died or something like that, and it was like him and his dad constantly clashing, and he left home. He abandoned his home, and then he's recently reconnected with his dad. And in the video, it has him and his dad sitting together and talking about like their time as when they were younger. And this is like, again, like common stuff that comes through in this kind of music, is trying to like reconnect and like process what's happening. And this is what's coming through in the research a lot. Mm-hmm. It's about trying to understand the world around us in a way that's just like expressed differently than you might get from like pop music. And I think that's where something really special lies in it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've got like any like songs that come to mind.
I don't know about specific songs, but like I think authenticity is a big thing that is associated with music, and in particular sort of like rock and metal, and kind of, and again I'm just thinking about that questionnaire that they gave us, and that was one of the things that they mentioned, like what's so important to you, like is it authenticity, is it this, like, so I think you're right. I think that is one of the biggest differences that you do get between kind of like sort of kind of like pop and kind of but I don't know, pop is such a tricky thing to kind of like sort of like define. So what do you mean? Like, is it music that's made for kind of like commercial music's sake, just to sell, I suppose, kind of, versus music that these bands are not necessarily making a living. So kind of there's a lot of the bands that me and my partner listen to, we call them kind of like, I guess, or they can be called like DIY punk bands, sort of like, that most of them, some of the bands we listen to, they literally have full-time jobs all of the time. Right. Like they're teachers, they work in banks, they do whatever, to fund going out and making this art, I suppose. And then they even like lose money when they're on tour and stuff. It's not like, they're doing it as kind of, as any kind of sort of like commercial gain necessarily. So I suppose that's the most kind of authentic sort of art music. And I suppose I think the songs that, I mean, this is probably true for kind of like any genre though, but like the songs that mean most to me are the ones that resonate with something that I have experienced, or I'll just get a lyric or a line where it just resonates with something so strongly that's part of my identity. So on my back I've got a New York Dolls lyric, and it's only a part of it, but it's basically the lyric is like you're in with the in part of the out crowd now, basically. So I've got like the in part of the out crowd, and it's because when I was growing up I very much felt that like me and my friends were the cool part of the non-cool kids kind of thing. So like, because when we went to college, like we were seen as kind of like a little bit cool because we were sort of like into our music. We were the kids that hung out in the quad. We like, doing X, Y, and Z, and like kind of a bit like, your benches that you were talking about. But we still were very much the out crowd of the whole society when you looked at it. So it's songs, I suppose, like that where I'll see something and I can relate it to me and my personal kind of like life that resonate the most. But Okay.
So I guess it still kind of links a lot with what we were saying, I suppose. Like, from the outside it looks scary, right? You don't understand the culture and the norms of those groups. It looks really scary. But I guess like a lot of it is just about trying to belong and understand the world, and I think that's what's important about art. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's one of the things I kind of like here, is that our psychology department is part of like the creative school. And so, like, that ability to be able to explore psychology in people, but also to have links with, like, artistic expression, I think is, like, a really interesting way to go about it.
Yeah.
like I'm always considered myself, like, historically, the way that I was trained and how I've, like, kind of gone through psychology, being like this really, like, straight edge, hard line, like, psychology from a really scientific perspective of, like, cog neuropsych. And as I've come here, like, this, just seeing these, like, possibilities of doing stuff differently, it's been really interesting. And so I think that's, like, something I would like to see more of. I think your idea of, like, looking at stuff like festival behaviour. I mean, last year when I did Download, I was like, I really want to just, like, write, like, a psychology, just, like, review of what I've seen at Download. So maybe at some point we have a look, we see. Download, contact us, we'll do some research with you.
Yeah.
They'll see this, they'll absolutely see this, I'm sure they will. But yeah.
We totally could though, that's just got me thinking, like, we would need to get ethics though, so yeah, that's important for kind of anybody thinking about sort of like researching. It's what we talk to our students about, so yeah, just could we get ethics to go out next year and
observations,
do some, or at least do some QR codes with some surveys.
I reckon we could probably do something. Talk to Live Nation and just go, hey, we want to do this, what do you think?
Yeah.
And just see if they give us access to the sample, to the population, I
suppose. Are they technically the gatekeepers?
Yeah. I imagine they would be.
Gatekeeper mission. That's something to
They run
think
it,
about.
so yeah, there we go. There's the process we've just gone through, thinking of a study and thinking about ethics already. So before we wrap up, I got a game. I stole this from a band called Raised by Owls, and in this band, the lead singer gets his mum, just a normal everyday lady, to look at metal logos and try and read them. And I thought it'd be funny as a metalhead. These are all bands that I really like, so I see them and I'm just like, okay, I can kind of work them out. Some of them are atrocious, and so it's going to be a bit of a challenge. So I'm going to show you and I'll show the camera. Hopefully they're big enough to see. So I'm going to start with number 1. These guys are playing at Bloodstock this year.
Okay. See, I was half hoping
I'll show the camera
that I might recognise some, but again, my genre is more like kind of pop punk type stuff. I've got my Green Day t-shirt on, but I thought I might just recognise some generally.
This is one of the worst ones. Kind of like this band is there's a little bit of an aspect that's a bit of tongue-in-cheek with them.
No clue.
Okay, so this is Sanguisugabog.
Okay, yeah, I've never even heard of
You'd never get that one. So that's Sanguisugabog. You can kind of see there's an S here, there's kind of some letters in there, but it is a mess and kind of on purpose.
Okay.
So the next one, this one was at Download this year.
So that looks way more familiar.
I saw this band, phenomenal. Really, really good. I'll just say there's 2 words.
I don't think it is, but to me it looks like Dream Theater, but they're not.
It's not Dream Theater,
no, I don't think that's not their logo. Like, I cannot read that, and I don't know.
That's Blood Incantation.
Right.
Yeah, so they do have another logo. If you do look at like the Download lineup, they have a slightly different logo listed there.
I mean, I can kind of see the word blood now you've said it.
A lot of these, what I tend to find is they're a challenge, and again, this might be really interesting to do some cognitive research on visual, like, pattern finding. Because when you look at this, it's an absolute blooming mess.
Yeah.
But when you kind of know what the band is, you can kind of go, okay, well, there's a C there, and then there's a kind of an, and that kind of looks like an N, and then a T there.
Yeah.
Like, you start to kind of look at them and go, okay, maybe there's something there. This is traditional Norwegian black metal.
I really wanted to get at least one. So, dark.
Yeah. I'll show the camera this one just quickly. Somebody might look at this and go, come on, Ken.
Dark.
These are like OG.
Looks like Throne.
Yes,
Is
Dark
that
Throne. That's Dark Throne.
Yeah.
So that's
that
like
one.
proper like pentagram black metal. This one goes this way around.
I mean, that looks easier to read.
Yeah.
It's cryptopsy.
Yeah, that's Cryptopsy. Yeah, there we go. So it's a bit easier. They were a bit nicer about that one, but that's Cryptopsy. And then these guys did a really good song with Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance, and they're like a newer band. They're a bit new. I'll just show it to the camera quickly. This is the last one. I did say 7, but I thought I'd go nice and I'll cut a couple over.
Frozen. Looks like Soul, but
yeah, there we go. Yeah, Frozen Soul. There we go.
Wow.
So you got 2 out of 5. I'm gonna say I'm
I got
impressed.
3. Didn't I?
You got Crypto. Oh yeah, you got Cryptopsy, Dark. There you go. So you got over half of them.
But I will admit I don't know who any of them are though. Like I was hoping I'd recognise some of them as actual like.
I was tempted to get Party Cannon. If anybody's familiar with Party Cannon's in the same kind of genre as like Sanguisugabog in terms of like the soundscape, really really heavy, but it's like a kids like bright coloured pink balloons just said Party Cannon, and the whole thing is you see like concert like festivals that are full of like Sanguisugabogs, like you can't read any of them, and then just Party Cannon and like really bright like pink, blue, red kids fonts, and they're always a fun one to just kind of chuck in. Okay, so 3 out of 5. Well done. I didn't fully expect all of them. I didn't go easy on these.
I'm
sorry
quite
about
impressed
that one.
with that, to be honest. I think that's excellent.
But when you said you didn't know any, I was like, oh god, am I being too mean for it? But not too bad.
I'm going to have to do some pop punk ones and bring them in, but I think they'll be more mainstream, so you'll know them probably.
That's fine. We'll give it a shot at some point. I don't know if pop punk do like. This is one of the things I never really understand is like why these like heavy metal, hardcore, like slam and all sorts do these logos because you can't read them. But after a point, what you do find is a lot of it tends to be done like ironically. Like again, Sanguisugabogs, it kind of feels ironic, where it's just like, okay, people do this. We're just gonna like pump it up to 11, and like. Their whole thing is their name makes no sense. I mean, they did a tour recently, and on Instagram they put a video. They're going around asking people like, "Okay, what's the band's name?" And nobody said the name right because it's just like, "What the hell is this?" So you do get to a point where it is then like they're doing it because it's kind of just silly. But I think it's always interesting. It's always a nice little challenge to try and figure out what they are. Okay, I think we should finish that there. We've talked quite a lot. My plan is I'll get this edited today and get it posted later today. We are recording this on the day, so it's fresh as possible. I've got a bunch of editing and I'm going to remove all of the... I'm not going to remove the swear words, actually, but I'll put some pictures and stuff in. If you send me stuff in the next couple of hours, I'll get them in there. So thank you very much, everybody. It was a bit more of like a chatty, kind of like personal episode this time. Next week, I think we're going to have a guest. I think Ravi's going to join us next week. We can book him in. And Ravi is going to talk to us about cults. So that's going to be really interesting. So I don't know about you, but I don't really know much about cults.
Don't know much, no.
Okay, so he's going to school us on some cult stuff. So hopefully see everybody. Any comments, put them in the chat. We'll monitor cattle watch the video this week.
I will.
We'll see. All right, cool.